Good morning, everybody. I am Christina Sorrento. I'm the Chief of the Intake and Regulatory Coordination Division, and this is the DRC meeting for 4861 Battery Lane. Your lead reviewer is Adam Bossy, who is on virtually, and he's pulled up the plans. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded. And the purpose of this meeting is for you to ask any questions you have based upon the comments that you received. So I'm going to turn it over to Adam first to highlight any of the major things we should talk about, and then it's your meeting. Go ahead, Adam.
Hey, thanks, Christina. Thanks, everyone. And good morning, applicant team and all my other reviewer friends. So this is 4861 Battery Lane sketch plan, and the comments that you received were sent out on Friday. Thank you, applicant team, for your understanding of us working through ePlans challenge. But our comments really kind of fall into two categories, one being kind of technical questions, requested corrections, and design adjustments. I think most of those are self-explanatory, or we can hit on any questions that you have on those. Major issues with the proposal, there's 3 of them that I had highlighted in one comment for you. Those are related to the public benefits table, specifically the through block connections, public open space, exceptional design point requests. The second major issue had to do with affordable housing, MPDUs, and the max building height that you're asking for. And then the third one has to do with the design advisory panel review and our overall schedule. So with that, I will turn it over to you, and we're happy to answer any questions. You've got everyone here.
I guess that's to me. Thank you. I'm Ian with VICA, Maryland. First and foremost, it was an error on my part to show that we were seeking additional height. We are not. It's going to be the basic 120 which shows on the screen. That's number one. A couple things I had written down that we just wanted to make sure to clarify. No, Marie, I got comments from Marie last week, and they were also included in Friday's comments, that we are going to make sure that we have the approved access road dimensional requirements. So there's no worry there, and we'll make sure we provide the detail that you were looking for in terms of dimensions. We're going to study the driveway width and see if the movements have any effect on whether or not we have the ability to potentially reduce that. We do have an updated design for the landscape and the courtyard and the street frontage. Most of the reason we waited for the DAP commentary response was to get the DRC comments and kind of roll it all into one. So that's why you're not seeing any of the DAP responses yet. I don't think I saw the DAP letter. If somebody could provide us with that letter, we can do the point-by-point response. I don't remember seeing that. Did we get that sent to us?
The DAP notes?
Yeah, from that meeting.
They're available online. I can send them to you.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. I could probably go on the website and get it. I apologize. We can talk about the architectural updates that we are studying and thinking about. We will be reviewing our public benefit points with regards to those 3 items that you discussed, Adam, and revising our road section and the bike lane, streetscape, all of that element along Battery. There are some environmental items that we want to discuss with staff. And then we can't remove any files. I know there was one file in there that you'd asked us to remove. But like you'd said, several of the things are clarifications, and I think we have no issue with responding to those and providing the information requested. So if we want to talk maybe a little bit about the thoughts that we were considering for the building changes with regards to the DAT comments we got, and then maybe we'll move to the landscape environmental portion. Maybe talk about our
what would
thoughts
you like me to talk about
for the architectural changes that we are considering for responding to that.
From my perspective, I thought we had a pretty good DAT meeting, but the outstanding comments to me were the building elevation along the bike path that's going from Battery Lane to the NIH property line.
And another image up, they're able to bring other plans up if you'd like to bring something.
It was in our presentation. I really don't have anything specific. Ian, we didn't really I mean, we're working in-house, but we didn't really come up with a new plan to present today. I didn't think that was
That's okay. That's fine.
right. And we have revisited the site plan, just like Ian mentioned, the turnaround, the drop-off area, the parking spaces. My primary concern was, again, that elevation, and Chung and I have been working on our model to address what we see as potential issues and how we can improve. At the front of the building, we were following, and we are following, an alternate means of articulating the building. And we're still convinced that we are meeting the setback and step back requirements, albeit in a slightly different way than just keep stepping the building back. There is a whole bunch of articulation, and the building does step back. But we will reevaluate it, see if there is a good way to respond to this. Frankly, that's what I walked away with architecturally from the DAP meeting. If you recall, if anybody recalls additional comments, those are the things we've been focusing on, which obviously does impact the overall shape of the building. We've looked at alternatives, and we will have some new elevations and a new site plan as far as the drop-off area is concerned, and there are a couple other minor revisions that we need to make.
And I know we haven't talked schedule yet, but we had assumed on the schedule that is published that we would be resubmitting by the 26th, our first submission
Of this month?
for this one.
Adam has a schedule.
Yep, thank you. Apologies, just didn't unmute myself. So the schedule comment I made was really the DAP submission deadline for September for this month is tomorrow to get on their meeting for the 27th. For October, you're looking at a deadline of the 11th for their meeting on the 25th. And then your first resubmission for the sketch plan itself would be on the 26th of September. So, I think you've got some challenges there to get the DAP submission in and maintain the 90-day schedule with the sketch plan.
Sure. And that was one clarification that we were hoping we could make was we are already under the gun with two applications, one being a battery, this one, and then another one that we are planning on submitting shortly. We were planning on submitting that one tomorrow for DAP for the September DAP meeting. We're hoping that you would be able to let us have an October DAP, knowing that we would get that letter in ahead of the planning board hearing.
I think it depends on how you're responding to the DAP comments.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, hey, and it's Stephanie. I think you guys, that's up to you guys to do that. But you still need to have the DAP saying, yes, this can move forward in October.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, and
Adam, when is their final submission date?
So final submission would be due October 16th, and then final comments from staff and agencies would be on the 24th. So it'd be like the day prior to the DAP meeting. So it would all come together at the end.
Right. So please understand, though, if you do go to the October date, you're going to have to roll in anything, any, updates that you want that are going to go to the DAP in October into those plans, and hope that nothing else comes out of the DAP in October, that you're then going to have to update additional plans before we go to planning board. So I'll leave it up to you guys if you want to do that with your schedule.
okay.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. I was looking at the DAP notes now online. I think the three big things really are how you are meeting the intent of the recommendations for the front elevation, defining the understory area and reducing the pavement and improving that landscaping, and then the rear with the through block connection. I think it was probably repeated in our comments today, that pinch point of 20 feet did not seem very substantial to the DAP. So those are the three main issues I think we see.
Thank you. And then the environmental aspect, I wanted to see if Josh could relay his thoughts on that.
Right, so we got the comments from Marco, Saquon, Ariel. Are you going to be taking us through, or is Marco?
Marco is, but we can relay the notes to him, or if there's the general questions, we could provide some background.
So the first was in terms of our LOD, and we had assumed we were going to have LOD in Battery Lane and basically our entire lot, like the two projects next to us on either side. And part of that is because providing the master planned trail connection, east-west connection. So I don't see a way of reducing our LOD significantly there. That will be less of a intrusion into the root zones than, say, a building foundation, but it is a trail, and there is significant grade differential as you move from east to west. So we will have to accommodate that, and we do our preliminary forest conservation plan. We'll provide the justification and any notes on critical impacts and whatnot. The other was that we realize we've got specimen trees coming down. We don't know the exact impacts to all of them yet, but we will, providing mitigation. And like other urban conditions, this is probably going to be mitigation of specimen trees on top of parking below. There's some areas that don't have any structures below, and we're going to approach it with our soil volume and our distance analysis like we typically do. I don't know that there's a lot we're going to do right now to sketch plan, just because we want to make sure we've got an approved footprint and open space plan before we do a lot of detailed design on it. But we will talk about those things in our statement of justification. We'll add an environmental section to come through this.
So it's pretty straightforward. I think Marco was just making you aware of all the issues, but we'll relay those comments to him, and he and Adam will get back to you if necessary.
Okay. One further thing on. Go ahead.
Oh, I apologize, Josh. Sorry. I was going to say, I know some of Marco's concerns were rooted too with the, a lot of what you're proposing is over structure because it's all underground parking. And I think that occupies the vast majority of the site area.
It does. It's certainly the building footprint on the outside and then underneath the entire courtyard on the inside. And we do have a pretty substantial grade change as we go from our building to the building to the west of us. But we may look at some kind of system to provide both stormwater and maybe some tree tree planting areas there with much more significant soil volumes as we address those through block connection comments. One thing on the streetscape is we realized 4901, there were 4 carpinus that were put, in my opinion, and I don't want to throw rocks at anybody, but much too close to the building to kind of provide this double tree.
Yeah, as recommended by the streetscape guidelines.
And I mean, you can put a carpinus 6 feet from a building, but you're going to have to hedge the crap out of it. We'll look at some kind of treatment there. I don't know that that's the best call to do.
I'll be honest, I'm like, obviously I would prefer to have a continuous streetscape that's seamless. Like, who wouldn't love that? But if there is, and I don't want to speak for the environmental folks, but like if there's something vegetative on that side, that'd be great. I also understand what you're trying to do with sort of the cantilever situation there. Like, we don't want to interrupt that view shed. I agree. Like, having views to the back is good. I think what I'm more kind of nitpicky annoying about is that they did a little bit of a wider buffer, I think it was, and I'd really like you to match that and match the sidewalk so that part isn't like a jog that's a severe shift. Certainly we encourage double row tree, but if there's something vegetative back there, I think that would still give like kind of a nice enclosed feel so it's not quite so exposed.
Yeah, so we'll definitely have a 6-foot tree panel. We'll have the 7-foot brick sidewalk to match the standard. Then we'll transition to Right now, we had significant hardscapes there, and that's what you're talking about, all the way to the building.
Yeah.
So we can break that up. We do have the columns, and we've got that vertical space between the roof of our overhang and the ground plane. And I think there's opportunity there to do something a little more artful than we did. So we've got a significant change.
You said something that I took it as that the building to our west was left a little more space for the sidewalk, unless I misunderstood you.
No, so I might be wrong. I can't remember if it's that the sidewalk's like a little bit wider than the minimum or the buffer is, but whatever those dimensions are, I'd like them to match.
I know. I'm pretty sure even our cantilevered piece or the,
I think I know. I think you're talking about the sidewalk width.
At the
right?
ground plane.
Okay.
No, and I appreciate you being sensitive to it because now's the time to have that conversation.
yeah.
Totally.
Sure.
Clarifications are important. I would just say that, like, I think I looked at what you guys had, and you even said that the cross section is going to change, but I looked at what was approved for 4901 and just
Got it.
make those widths match. Exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
Okay.
And from a streetscape design perspective, we do want to have some measure of continuity in the double of, because the idea is to have this colonnade of trees and more shade. So if there's a different tree that works better there, Josh, like please. Our main sort of concern with these things usually is that we want primary species trees curb running.
Yep.
And closer to the building, we're more flexible, but we do want to maintain some measure of LA of trees along this. But if it's Carpinus or something else, like you tell us what you think is going to work well there. But it would be weird to have 2 rows of trees and then one of them turns into just ground cover or a head. We just need to like tread that maybe a little bit. So happy to hear.
Sketch plan.
Say what?
And that's why we love sketch plan on its own.
Yes.
Do you remember what was done with the frontage for the building to our east? I didn't double check that.
I don't know, because I think that may have come in right when the streetscape guidelines were being finalized, so I don't think that we pushed as hard on that one. But that one we only, I think we only have a preliminary plan, so we don't have the site plan fully
Right.
fleshed out.
But the idea that's part of the district sketch plan, so they were the ones that proposed this double row of trees, and it would have, everything we've done so far has matched that.
The species we actually don't mind bearing at all, because if you all have the same species as you, better than us, they catch it and they can all die at the same time, all of that. So it's good to have variety.
I'd like to use something certainly more columnar. I know cultivars aren't always preferred, especially for taking credit. We might not take credit for these, but use a cultivar that does better in these conditions.
And also, this project is not in the CBD area. That's just as well where you pick shows in the species list. The other thing I was going to say was, for the same reason, the sidewalk is complete. Really?
Yeah, we had this discussion kind of late in the game after 4901 was approved, but yeah, because this is outside of the buff maintenance area, at least the travel way needs to be concrete. We have some flexibility with putting brick in either the kind of like buffer area or right in front. We can also do it right in front of the building to kind of do like a yay kind of thing. But yeah, generally speaking, we're looking for poured concrete here.
Okay.
But just for the pedestrian throughway, so
Right.
that can be narrow and can have special materials in the curb. Planting and furnishing zone on either side of it.
Okay.
Then you're also, just bear in mind, if it is in the right of way, you'll have to enter a maintenance and liability agreement with MCDOT. Yeah, Ian knows the drill. Thank you.
So 5 feet concrete at the pedestrian throughway?
Let's double check what the guidelines say is the through zone. I think it might be 6.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think 6 is the new 5.
Yes.
6 is the new, I'm gonna get a t-shirt with that on there. That's great.
I'm understanding. Next year, it's going to.
Next year's 8.
I hope not.
Hey, guys, we're not gonna creep that.
I hope not.
Okay. Yeah. I looked at the section that we got approved on 4901, and it was 6 foot street buffer, 7 foot paving, and transition from landscape or hardscape, depending on where it was along the building, match that, and I'll look at the details.
And aesthetically, we certainly recognize that other materials are better, but I think MCDOT has raised some valid concerns about the accessibility implications and the maintenance implications. So we're trying to find a compromise where the travelway can be good accessibility material, but you can carry that across our entry door. And you can make certain exceptions at the primary entrance to the building to signify it, and yeah, that would be great. I mean, the frontage is not that wide, so I think not gonna.
Maintenance and liability.
Please.
And the only part that may be slightly different is the actual driveway into
Oh,
the
yeah.
site because of the fire access.
Yeah.
We need to be able to get Marie's vehicles in there.
Yeah, we're not looking for brick there, but the concrete treatment and grade should, yeah, all the, yeah. You're a frequent flyer here, so I figure you know.
That's all I had. I didn't know if Chris wanted to bring anything up or if Josh had anything additional to raise.
I just want to say thank you so much for the circulation pattern. I know it's duplicative of other things that are out there, so it's not as exciting for your architect, but like from a safety standpoint and circulation, we really appreciate it. And we
Okay.
look forward to working with you on the pathway connections in the future.
Yeah. Thank you guys for your comments and for your time today.
Likewise.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks, company. Just quickly, again, I want to just hit on that schedule. Again, if you're looking for an October DAP meeting, your deadline to submit is for the 11th. You can talk to Grace and Kashil about getting the application in. Your first resubmission on the sketch plan is due September 26th, and we're due to have comments back to you October 6th.
Thank you.
Yep. Agents, your last submission is due October 16th, and our last comments will come out on the 24th, day before the DAP. Our staff reports due to post November 6th, and this is all working toward a planning board hearing date of November 16th.
Agreed. Thank you.
Thanks.
Great.
All right, thanks, everybody. am Christina Sorrento. I'm the Chief of the Intake and Regulatory Coordination Division, and this is the DRC meeting for 9801 Georgia Ave. Your lead reviewer is Parker Smith, and the purpose of this meeting is really for you to ask any questions about the comments that you received last week. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded. I'll ask Parker to highlight any of the major issues we should talk about and then turn it over to you. So go ahead, Parker.
Thank you. Yeah, so you received our comments. I think they were pretty thorough. Sort of the highlights, I think, for us are the Civic Green. I know that there's sort of some discussion still to be had about exactly how the Metro Tunnel is going to figure into the Civic Green. I think our stance is that can't really count towards the Civic Green area that is conditioned from the sketch plan to be a ½ acre of minimum. And that's also a master plan recommendation. Also, the through block connection, we're a little concerned about just the safety and viability and functionality of that space. From a SEPTED perspective, we want to make sure that it's not sort of a dark, dangerous space to walk through, and that it can be viable and, well used throughout the year. Building design, we had very specific conditions in the sketch plan approval for some adjustments to be made to the building. We just want to make sure that those are really covered so that this new proposal is fully in compliance with those conditions. I think sort of an itemized list of how you've responded to those conditions would be in order here. And then lastly, access. The TIS is still under review. For access, we defer to DOT and SHA as the lead agencies. We have heard from the community about this issue already, so that's something to be discussed as well. So those are the highlights. Over to you.
Great. Okay. So we went through, obviously, in the short time that we had, we went through the comments and met as a team to kind of go through them. There's a lot of little ones that we have questions about, but we don't want to take up the time today to go through them. One thing, honestly, just to start off, we thought the tone of some of the comments was pretty sharp. And I thought that when I read it, and others on the team thought it as well. And we've been doing this a very long time. And I thought, we're all professionals here. The applicant's team has worked very hard and continues to, and I feel like we've had a very collaborative relationship. And I'm not sure that came through in some of the comments. I thought they were a little sharp, like I said. So we will continue to work through that. Some of the comments were very definitive, and I think that there's room for interpretation there. So I kind of wanted to note that at the beginning because we were a little taken aback by that. But there was a noise study that was commented on multiple times. We actually have that prepared. We had it prepared. It just wasn't uploaded properly in ePlans, so that will be part of the resubmission. Also, Woodland Utilities, we had their utility consultant did a comprehensive analysis of how far the utilities can go up. As you know, the condition says as far as they can go without starting to impact other properties or negatively impacting. So we have an analysis of that in a plan that will also be included in the resubmission, and we apologize that those were omitted from the first round. On the transportation, that's good to know. I mean, the sooner that we can get feedback from SHA and MCDOT on the access, obviously the better. The plan obviously is a focal point of that, or a main aspect of that is that Woodland access. So if there's going to be any questions about the analysis from our transportation consultant, we'd like to know sooner rather than later. Many comments were on the LATR cap and the Greenway. I know we have standing meetings already set next week, right? We were hoping to use that meeting for more in-depth analysis of that to kind of figure out what the priorities are, what's going to be what should be included in the cap and whatnot. So hopefully we can use that meeting to focus on that issue because it came through multiple times. I also wanted to note that there were a number of comments about the coordination with MCDOT on the tunnel. We actually have standing meetings. We met them a number of times. We have standing meetings. We're going to be including DPOC in those going forward. It was suggested to have someone from development review in there to
kind of bridge the gap between the people working on the tunnel and what we're doing here. But the comments like the undergrounding of utilities on Forest Glen, that has been a topic of conversation. It doesn't make sense for the applicant to underground them and put them in MCDOT's way so that they have to contend with them when they're building the tunnel. So that's an ongoing issue of who does it and when and what the timing is. And I think we have our next meeting later this week, in fact. So we will obviously keep everyone informed as those conversations move forward. On the architecture, I agree, we will be doing a point-by-point response. Because I think it was characterized that we didn't pay any attention to the June comments. We did. Obviously, architecture is a subjective thing. You see one thing, I see something else. But the architect did try to incorporate many of those aspects, and we'll be doing a point-by-point response. And then I think maybe we can sit down after that to see where we are on that. There was a comment, I think, a couple of times about condition 412, saying that there should be a setback of 30 feet along Woodland, on the north side of Woodland, that 30-foot setback had to be from the building facade. I mean, we obviously had scrubbed these conditions pretty extensively at the time of sketch plan. That was not our interpretation. We were interpreting it to be from the property line. And I would just say, usually references of a setback is to the property line, and condition 4.5 explicitly talks about a setback from the primary facade. So our position is that if it had meant to be from the primary facade, it should have said it like it did in condition 4.5. And so we have always taken the position that that 30-foot setback is from the property line. So that's why that is what it is. Open space and landscaping, there were a number of comments on the through block connection. And that was something that we actually included early on because there's a utility easement there that's forcing a natural setback. We tried, the landscape architect tried to, make it inviting. We have a lot of things that we've incorporated at staff's comments, but if that's still an issue, I think we have a question of whether we should still be including it. We can't put a dog park up there because that would require fencing, which can't go over the easement. So as far as playground equipment, anything like that can't go in that space. So it's not called for in the sector plan. It was just something that kind of seemed logical given the length of the block, but maybe it's worth revisiting whether that should just become a more passive green space instead of a through block. So I just kind of throw that out there for further discussion. And if anyone wants to talk about any of this, just stop me. I'm just kind of going through my thoughts. Then on the moving to the civic green, there was a comment about accessibility, and we would like further clarification on that because obviously there's a lot of grade, there's a lot going on, but land design took a lot of effort to make sure that these spaces were accessible on each level. So I'm not sure where the concern on the ADA accessibility is coming from. Anyone wanted to opine on that or?
Sure. Perhaps you could provide an exhibit. I mean, normally when we get exhibits, they show us pedestrian paths as well as ADA accessible paths, because the way I looked at it, you would primarily be using the sidewalk, for ADA access. That's what I saw, but maybe my interpretation was not correct. Sorry, that's Mrs. Amy.
Okay, thanks, Amy. Okay, so we'll an exhibit on that. There were also multiple comments about the screening of the transformers, which that had come up at sketch plan. Those are underground, so I don't know.
Then they're screened. That's
right.
Right, that's right. But it came up, so we just wanted to clarify that again, that those are actually underground. And then the half-acre comment on the civic green. Obviously, we have worked very hard on the civic green, the design, the size. As part of this submission, we actually made an effort to make sure that it was 0.5 acres on site, although Matt and I talked before the sketch plan. there is no requirement that it be on site. So the condition itself says functional space, because it's our position that there is no place where it says it has to be on site, and as long as it reads like a half an acre, that it's our position that should be sufficient. But despite that, we did make sure that we had a half acre on site. And then we got comments about excluding the tunnel, which was new. That never had come up at sketch plan. So I think we need to have further conversations about what the basis of excluding the tunnel is. If we exclude the tunnel, are we including the right of way to get to this magical half acre number? Because we do think that it's the functional area. And we have the same position about, there was a comment about how it wraps the side of the building, particularly on that woodland side. I mean, that is meant to be a natural flow of that space. And when you read, and I actually went back and looked at the design guidelines again. I mean, it's meant to be, yes, the focal point's a lawn, but there's different spaces for shading, sitting under a tree and all that. And so I think we would like further justification as to why that can't be included, or if there's a design that you would prefer to see there, we want to have that conversation, because we do think that will read and function as part of that space, that public space. Just a couple more things. So then on the parking count, there was a projects reference that were below the 1.0 minimum. So I'm not sure. I mean, when we're talking about minimal parking, we were thinking we were starting at the 1.0 per unit. There was reference to a project that had 0.7, but they must have had a waiver to get to that. So, and we can provide extensive we have dropped it. We've dropped it significantly. We still need some for retail, obviously, but that maybe needs to be part of an ongoing conversation, because we're considering the floor to be the 1.0 per acre that the zoning ordinance calls for. And then just on the final comment, we've said this probably ad nauseum, that the project cannot go higher. So we keep getting pushed for more space in the civic green, make this, the northern part wider, make more breaks. Everything that we do at the ground plane right now is going to result in the loss of density. And so we just wanted to kind of bring everyone back to, all we hear about in the county is wanting housing, more housing, more housing, more housing. And I understand that all the various groups are focused on their thing, just the half acre, just the urban design aspect. But we have tried to walk a tightrope here to provide the density that's called for in county policies and the sector plan. And so, like I said, we're willing to work with you, but we think that we request that there be start to be a balancing of interests here, because we can't just keep chopping away at the building and get the density that everyone in the county seems to want. So thank you for listening to my spiel. Those were our comments. Like I said, there's a lot more work to be done, obviously, and we'd like to reserve next Tuesday to go over the Greenway and all of that, because we understand that we need to work closely with you on your priorities. Did I miss anything on our side? So that's it. If there are any other comments that you want to highlight or talk about.
No, I think we have lots of discussion and future meetings to sort of hone this into something that we're sure is master plan compliant, and the sketch plan had a lot of conditions that we need to make sure that we're fully meeting. So
yeah, like I said, on the architecture, it's probably easiest. We'll go through those, both the conditions and the comments from June, and kind of say how we think we're accomplishing them, and then we can have a more detailed meeting on them.
One thing that I just wanted to chime in with, and I appreciate the response to comments. I think we'll look at the collaborative addressing the issues as we move forward and everything. In particular, the discussion about the open space and the functional space and everything. Sketch plan is high level. There are a lot of things that are discussed at that time, but even new information coming in now as part of the subdivision as to whether or not it's to be dedicated, conveyed. We need to make sure that any part of that conveyance in the future continues to be open space, and really the kind of details of how that works out. So, always responding to new information and details as they're presented. So I think that's a discussion we need to see.
Okay. Yeah, and I think we have a meeting later today on that. So.
I did have a discussion, phone conversation with Michael yesterday about the easement and non-standard structures over the easement. I guess he has a further discussion. We're going to talk about it after this.
Yeah, we went over, I went over that with the client as well. And I think we're, getting to that same thing where we're honing in on a solution there.
So we still have 25 minutes left and we want to meet again next week. Like that's the part I'm having a hard time with. Is there stuff we can discuss now?
Well, I think that I don't know that we have Nick on. Yeah. Nick was, I mean, there were a lot of comments and they were extensive on the traffic study and all that. So he was kind of looking through that and really needed a little more time to be ready to have the comprehensive conversation about, some of the comments about the Greenway and the priorities and all that. So unfortunately, I think we got these Friday night, we like I said, we met yesterday and we're doing our best to digest these things as quickly. But I think given the issues, they just need a little more time to.
Just speaking of more time, when will we have State Highway and MCDOT comments if we didn't get them yet?
So they have a review cycle of 30 days from when they're given the TIS. MCDOT and SHA has 45 days. So I think DOT's on the line, but I know they're actively reviewing it, but they have
for a date when.
Let me pull up.
Well, Quasi's on the line and Brenda's on the line.
Yeah, early. This is Quasi with SHA. Early October. We're trying to get it before that though. We're working to get it before that.
Yeah, same here. This is Deepak with DOT. I think we are by end of this month. We should have something as far as the TIS is concerned.
So in terms of dates, what I had discussed with them is September 21st for MCDOT comments and October 6th.
Is that the 45 days?
That's the 45 days from when they received the TIS, yeah.
Then who do you need in the meeting for next week then?
Whoever is appropriate to talk specifically about the offsite improvements in the LATR cap and the Greenway. So I assume MCDOT staff? Transportation staff? They don't really.
Please include Sam in that meeting. Sam.
Include Sam.
And then for architecture, do you want to put together that sort of?
I think that would be most productive, is just to put together kind of a response, and then we figure out where the pinch, then you have time to digest it, and then we figure out where the pinch points are.
Okay.
Yeah.
The one thing I wanted to flag for Aaron, you raised the point about the 30-foot condition, and in the resolution, it does say 30 feet, right? But it doesn't clarify where that 30 feet is from. But in the staff report, I'm just looking at it, on page 22, there's a diagram that does show a 30-foot setback from the facade.
Well, I went back and looked at that when I got that comment. Yes, it does show, but to me, it's ambiguous. It's not really clear that that's from the facade. Okay, I mean,
we can talk about this. Yeah. This may be something that, you interpreted differently than what we had communicated, but it was not our intention for it to be from the right of way and the property line. And I think we tried to, that's why we put diagrams in the report. Of course, they can always be more clear and more detailed, but at sketch plan, people also tell us not to be super clear and super detailed because it's sketch plan. So I think that warrants a discussion, and we are happy to talk to you about it, but do go back and,
to build off of that, we don't actually always do a sketch, but I think we were trying to be really clear, which is why we did a sketch, and that's why it's in the staff report. I know that the words, can't encompass every single thing in the sketch, and that's why we did the sketch.
Yeah, I understand, but I'm just telling you, like our group, when we were looking at the language of the conditions and we looked at the sketch, every single one of us thought it was from the property line.
Yeah.
And that's why we didn't scream about that condition at sketch plan, because if it had been from the facade, it would have been a bigger issue. So I mean, just being honest with you, I'm not trying to rewrite history.
Yeah, Yeah, I think
We're being honest.
we are being honest.
Yeah, no, I know.
We
I'm
have no
just saying,
intention of.
That,
being
that's
from the
clear,
property
is
line,
that
so-
what you intended and what we understood were different. So I agree with you. We just need to have we need to
we
have
would have that discussion because we, like I said, we don't typically do a sketch, but we said, you know what, we want it to be really clear, so we're going to do the sketch. And so I think, yeah, this is a very important point that I think we need to work through. I also want to respond to the comments. I think what we achieve with the comments is just be extremely clear. And so if it came off as like a tone that was, not desirable, certainly don't want that to happen. But what we're going with our comments is to be really clear and to be very professional. So I think we consistently do that when we provide comments to all applicants.
And I'm not saying it was, and I'm not going to be specific because I don't want to call people
Sure.
out. It wasn't but there were some comments that I'm just saying, they did not, they were offensive to some of
Yeah, I mean, that's not our intent. We never want to, our intent is to be extremely professional. So,
Understood. And that's
our
frankly
goal.
why I was raising it, just, for feedback.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the feedback.
Yeah, I mean, again, we don't need to pinpoint, but, we always try to always start with positives. And even I'm reading at our comments now, it's all like, staff appreciates this, staff appreciates that.
Like I said, I don't want to make everyone defensive, and I'm not saying it's everybody.
Well,
and
but I'm
we
not saying can't just just take that and not respond to it, because I think that is a pretty serious comment, right? We are all professionals and we're all trying to work with you. And we are trying to give you clear and comprehensive comments. And sometimes our comments are very minimal and sometimes our comments are a lot. And I think they're usually a lot when we feel like there's not a lot of response to them. So it's a two-way street and we are happy to work on that two-way street with you. But I didn't want this to just go unresponded that, our comments they're not intended to be that. If you felt like that, that's fortunate, but our goal here is to get a good project on the ground and built up. So
As is ours.
that's what we're trying to get to.
Hello, this is WSSC Caricarpio. We have here our project manager that do the review. If you have any questions, because we have a critical comment. Matt Snyder is here. If you have any question about the easement.
No, I don't think we had questions about that comment. I think it kind of dovetails with the comment that Park Planning had about the through block connection as well. So I think it's one more thing we're going to have to figure out. But it's one of those things where we understand that WSSC doesn't let certain things in those easements. And it kind of ties our hands more to further activate the space.
Okay, great.
But thank you.
The through block connection is really important on this site because of how long the block is, right? Like the alternative to it, which is way past the point at this point, would be to have two blocks of the street running through it. And we are not there. We don't want to be there. So we definitely need a through block connection. And we want to make sure it feels safe, inviting, and comfortable for people to use. Not just people who live in this building, but people who live in the neighborhood want to use the through block connection to cut through the block. So that's where our priority on that is, whether it has a specific element in the courtyard versus the other, we can talk about that. But we do want to make sure it doesn't end up being like some of the through block connections that we received up and down Georgia Avenue that on paper look like they're through block connections, but in reality, no one uses them. And that's where typically you end up getting nuisance users. As a property owner, building manager, you're dealing with that later on, and we want to avoid that.
And I think some of the reasons why those fail is the width.
Yeah.
I'm point up there and not name the building. It is 10 feet at best with stormwater management coming in. It is a concrete skateboard ramp, right? I think what we're trying to accomplish is sort of a meandering path that is wide enough that does cut close to the building so that you do have the activation down there. You can't put a dog park in that little cutout. You can't put a dog park where I wanted. You're never going to put a dog park right in that courtyard because it's too loud. So, trying to accomplish is sort of master of all. Activating it, we're trying to put grills down there, outdoor seating, things that people will use. putting eyes on that side and also keeping it wide enough and not just this straight shot deck. And we're struggling with light poles. You can't put them everywhere you want. You also don't want it to be lit up like a Christmas tree. So you're trying to wash it with light from the building and all over the place. And I think we're getting there. We might not be there, and I'd have to work with you guys, but I think we're getting closer to what I think will work. And we hear you. We don't want this to be that one.
Yeah.
Because I
Yep.
walked it 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
just
that's-
trying to feel it again, and that it feels worse every time I walk it.
And this one's over, even at its pinch points, it's at 40 feet wide.
And I think for that particular area of the property, and even for the civic green and the discussion around the streetscapes and all of that, it's going to be really helpful for us to see some sections. Because what you can read in a section, in a landscape section drawing, is irreplaceable from any other type of drawing. You can't get that dimension in a plan. You can't really get a sense of it even from a three-dimensional view, like a perspective, because it skews the space. Like, we need to look at all that stuff in true sense, true scale, true sense. And then we can talk about, okay, there's this much space here. This is what you're proposing to put in here. Does it meet that goal to have a safe, attractive, convenient through block connection? So when we talk about the design pieces, and quite frankly, I think some of and this isn't reflected in the comments, this is site plan, this is our final sort of review of the architecture landscape design. So we are asking for more detailed drawings, right? Like we need those to be able to even agree or disagree with you, like whether so we need that detail. I think it's reflected in our comments. And when you put together a response, I think it'll be helpful to give us that detailed information along with your responses so that we can at least clearly understand what you're trying to communicate back to us. Because right now the drawings are pretty small, they're small scale. It's hard to
There's a lot going on.
even agree or disagree. I mean, based on the drawing. So we just need more information, and site plan is the time to do it. So when you put together a response, we request that you give us clarity and detail to the extent that's needed to come to a consensus on these points.
All right, anything else?
Just in terms of timing, I guess with some of the other items, I mean, I think we're supposed to be resubmitting on the 27th. I'm not certain that's going to happen, so, we'll discuss it, but we might.
Yeah, you can contact me with updates on the schedule and follow-up meeting requests of all shapes and forms. Yeah.
And we'll send out the meeting request for next week sometime, probably today.
Great.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you. Sorrento. I am the chief of the Intake and Regulatory Coordination Division, and this is the DRC meeting for 15600 Radwick Lane. Your lead reviewer is Emily Tettlebaum, and the purpose of this meeting is for you to ask any questions based upon the comments that you received. I'll ask Emily to kind of highlight any of the major issues and then turn it over to you. Go ahead, Emily.
Thanks. I am sharing my screen to show option 1 of the concept plan. Thank you so much for submitting this concept. I think it's really important for sites like this that are challenging. Obviously, the site has challenging topography and a number of environmental features, which will make it, challenged to develop. Unfortunately, as we said in the comments, the two concepts that were submitted, both options are not going to work with the current zoning, the current environmental streets, and the design of the proposed road here would not be wide enough to meet county standards, either as a public or private road. So we've given you a number of comments, and I answered all of the questions that you submitted. They're all in the uploads folder if you didn't happen to see them. And yeah, we'll turn it over to you, and happy to answer any questions you have about our comments.
Okay, thank you, Christina. And thank you for the board for the DRC meeting. I'll quickly, before I get started and introduce my team, I'll quickly mention that I'm in transit, so there is some background noise. As I go through this, if it's unbearable, please let me know. I'll quickly stop and mute myself. That said, our team is made up of Ash, which is me, Abhinav. Abhinav is local resident in Baltimore, and Monica, who is our lead designer. I'm also part of the owner and designer team. We're an architectural design firm in Austin, Texas, and we were planning to work with Abhinav and be partners in this development. I understand your concerns regarding the option. Option 2, I don't think, as I submitted it, I don't think will work anyway, because R200 doesn't allow for less than 20,000 square feet. Option 1, I understand that if we widen the roads to 20 feet wide, we get the turning radiuses that are allowable by fire truck. We follow the road construction guidelines that make it a dedicatable public right-of-way. And we account for the stream valley buffer, and we take out the lots that are less than 16K square feet. We may have something that could potentially work. It may not be 7 lots. It may end up being 4 or 5 lots. In concept, does that sound close to doable?
Potentially, without seeing it and without having an NRI approved, it's hard to say for sure, but it sounds like it could potentially work.
Understood.
The site is mostly forest, so you would definitely need to account for the forest conservation law too.
Right, and I'll get to the forest conservation in a little bit. We are pretty heavy on vegetation here in Austin, Texas as well, and I'm aware that a tree and topo survey or tree survey needs to happen so we can identify the exact trees and then talk about which trees would get mitigated and which other trees would need to be saved and such. But before I get there, I had a few other items that I'll quickly go through. We did not engage a civil team yet, but if the project looks reasonable after this meeting, we have a civil team on board and we will engage them. And, right now the road layout may not look accurate because of that reason. Once the civil team gets engaged, they will work through it. I'll quickly, if I may, can I share my screen? Because my questions are highlighted on my documents, and it'll make it easier for you to answer my questions if I were to do them first.
Sure, yeah, you should be able to.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. So please let me know when you can see my screen.
Yep.
Okay, so this is the document that was uploaded, and I've just gone through it, and I have a few questions, and I'll quickly go through my questions. I have no comments about the 6-foot wide street buffer and the 6-foot wide sidewalk. Request for full payment in lieu of construction if the improvement would lead to serve environmental impact, to sever environmental impact. What does that mean?
This is Richard. I made that comment. Should be severe. Sorry. So there are ways that you can do a payment in lieu of construction. And so I just gave you the two options. You can do a fee in lieu. And then I think, I'm not sure if it's on this comment or another one, it may be a de minimis payment. So there are just two options to address that Complete Streets Design Guide requirement if you don't want to do construction. But you'd have to basically show that there's going to be severe environmental impacts or that you meet the de minimis payment requirements.
And Richard, I apologize since I'm not, I'm well versed in design and construction. I'm just not well versed in the local things of Baltimore or Montgomery County area. When you say instead of construction, you mean I could build a road that is per code minimum, but may not comply with Montgomery County's specific construction requirements. And I have to identify how environmental impact happens if I were to go to the level of complying with those requirements. Is that what we mean?
So to be clear, this is on Radwick Lane. So this is not the internal street. So I just want to make sure that's clear that this is the frontage street that this would apply to. And there's a policy, and I think we could email you a link to that policy for both the fee in lieu or the de minimis payment. But basically, you would do that instead of construction of the sidewalk and street buffer.
Understood. Okay, yeah, it would be great if you could share that.
Sure.
Would I need to make a turn lane into the property? Like, this is not a highway service road. So, so you're just saying there are some sidewalk requirements which may need to be. Okay, understood. Now I understand your point. Moving on to number 3 or area transportation, the yellow highlighted comment, it is unclear if this is a proposed driveway or a proposed public-private street. I was open to both. I understand that if it's a private driveway, it cannot have more than 4 homes on it. I may get limited to four units anyways based on the stream valley buffer and the other requirements. So I may consider a private street. Is that assumption correct that a private street can serve 4 units?
A driveway can serve up to 4 lots. A private street can serve any number, but I think it would be, I think Brenda's on. I'm not sure if DOT has an opinion on whether that would need to be a public or private street, but in either case, it'd have to be built to the standards of the street type.
Understood. Okay, moving on to my next question, fire and rescue for Marie. Fire department vehicle access and water supply is required for the site. So I understand that there is, I understand that the current zoning of this land is such that even though the water and sanitary sewer is present right outside the site, I cannot yet tap into it until I change from S1 to S6. Or if I'm using some wrong terminology, I have to change from one type to another. Is that what you meant, Marie, or is there some other intent behind that yellow highlighted section?
That sentence is a generic statement because the information that came to me did not give me pavement widths or turning radii or water supply locations. That is the point you bring up about water supply. If the homes are going to be on public water, which it sounds like they will be,
yes,
you must find a hydrant within 400 feet of end of truck travel measured as the truck travels. So if your nearest hydrant is outside that 400 feet, you might be looking at installing a tank on site or upgrading your water system.
Which means if a hydrant is 1,000 feet away from me, I might be requesting as with my civil plans, I might be submitting an upgrade to or an extension of that fire line to bring a hydrant within 400 feet of the entry point of my site. And of course, I'll have to bear the cost of that.
Well, it's not the entry point to your site, it's to the end of truck travel. So that loop, that further point of the loop into your site, you're going to measure 400 feet as the truck travels back from that. So that's going to get you even closer in. So be prepared for that.
Understood. So I will essentially have to bring the fire line to within my site. So at any point on that fire lane, because I'm essentially creating a fire lane, even if it's a private drive, or trucks should be able to get up there, take the turning radius and all. So I have to have a hydrant within 500 feet of any point of another hydrant on site through that travel distance. Of course,
yes.
Sorry, okay.
No, absolutely right.
Okay, and I understand that I am more used to 300 feet as a loop, not 150 feet or 50 feet, depending on the height of the building. Could you shed some light on that comment, please?
That's a direct code requirement. It comes out of NFPA 1, Chapter 18, and our Executive Regulations 8-16. So that is written into our prescriptive code in Montgomery County.
Okay, our height, and I won't quote you on this, but our height is about 35 feet. Would that let me have 50 feet or 150 feet?
You're going to be close. So it's a different height requirement for life safety code. I'm looking for 27 feet to your highest window sill. Oftentimes, the 35-foot building heights will accommodate that, but you're going to have to show me some architectural options, because that 27-foot includes any false dormers. So if you try to, right, so meet 27 feet to your highest windowsill, and your walking path extends from 50 to 150 feet.
Understood. Okay, let me move on to my next question. The next question is item 8, the highlighted question. Forest conservation easement is not allowed to overlap with any other easement, I'm assuming. Could you all shed some light on that, please?
Yeah, that's just a standard comment that we have. Pretty much an easement, if it were to happen on forest conservation, you cannot have that.
Okay. So if I have a stream valley buffer and I can't build in that zone, can I also, and there are some trees right next to the stream, can I double count it? Like, can I count it as forest conservation even though there is stream valley buffer in that area?
Hi, this is Amy Lindsay.
Yes.
And from an environmental perspective, we would require that stream valley buffer be placed in a Category 1 conservation easement. Montgomery County does have a forest conservation law, which regulates the amount of forest cleared on site. And we would be looking for to maximize forest retention here and minimize any impacts to the stream valley buffer.
Understood. That said, and I'm going to quickly pull up I guess I don't have to pull up a visual. Everybody knows this site is completely wooded. That said, and if I have to, as a developer, develop this site, what options do I have? Because I couldn't develop this site if you were to mandate, save all the trees, you can't cut the trees. If you cut one, 4-inch caliper, you got to plant 4 trees. Or I'm just trying to understand what are my options and avenues. Could you please shed some light on the forest conservation minimums that I need to do?
Sure. So the forest conservation process starts with a natural resource inventory, forest stand delineation. And you've heard people say NRI FSD, but that's what that means. So the process starts with basically an inventory about what is on site. How many acres of forest, where the trees are located, where streams are located, and what their stream valley buffers are, as well as off-site features as well. We require up to 100 feet off-site. So that's kind of our starting point, but the specific requirements are dictated by a worksheet that we use so that we're able to be, consistent, and it's mandated by law the way that it's applied. So it is very property specific what is required. So what they've put up on screen is there was a property directly below yours.
Understood.
And so you can start to see, because they were mandated to show 100 feet off-site, you can start to see where, at least partially, the stream valley buffer is.
That's right.
So we would be looking for access to occur in an area that's not within the stream valley buffer, because there is more frontage that access could occur in.
Understood. So that's why I pulled up this one, because I know of this stream valley buffer, which again, there are different terms used in different geographical areas in the United States. A stream valley does a stream valley buffer mean a creek or a water flow low topography point where the water finds the natural path of least resistance to travel to lowest point of the ground? Is that what it is?
So Montgomery County has our environmental guidelines that we use, and we standardize our stream determinations. So you can have an ephemeral channel where there is only water flowing in direct response to rainfall. You could have an intermittent stream, which is a channel that has water flowing for part of the year. So perhaps in the spring when the water table is higher, or you can have a perennial stream. And then the stream valley buffer is determined by the watershed you're located in, the slope of the ground surrounding it. There are a lot of sort of issues that play into that. So it's very site specific, the drawing of a stream valley buffer.
Understood. So all that said, what percentage of trees, I mean, as you can see from this PDF, where did it go? Let me quickly pull that up again. As you can see from this PDF, this is a completely wooded lot. It doesn't have one location that's not wooded. My question is, as a developer, and I'm completely on board on getting creative with saving trees, and I attended the DRC meeting for my neighbor here, so I understand that I cannot cut lots and conserve trees within those lots, because then it becomes the responsibility of the lot owner not to cut it, and those folks either knowingly or unknowingly don't comply with those requirements, and they end up cutting heritage trees that may be on the land. And that's why the county is wanting to specify a zone. And what I'm trying to understand is what percentage of this site, 20%, 10%, 30%, what percentage of this site needs to be that zone? So I can understand if this lot is developable for more.
So that, once again, as I was trying to explain with the worksheet, it's not just a straight percentage, right? It's a bit dynamic depending on how much forest you have. So I can't give you a straight percentage. We have a whole process for figuring that out.
Which essentially what I understand is that once the tree survey is done and each type of tree and their caliper is identified, then you would look at how many caliper of protected trees, because I'm assuming a cedar tree or a tree that has no value to something. Maybe if I'm 50% of that tree, you would say, yeah, you can cut all those trees because they don't have much value. But if I'm live oaks, you will say that don't cut the live oaks because they have some value. Is that what you mean roughly in your evaluation, like you mentioned?
Not exactly. I understand what you're saying, but we look at forest and trees separately, though they're both covered under forest conservation law. Forest is seen as a whole community. So for example, an acre of forest, I am not looking, I may, in terms of prioritization, look, is the forest protecting stream valley buffer? Is it, primarily invasives? Does it have big trees in it? For prioritization standpoints, but still, it's 1 acre of forest is 1 acre of forest. And that is what the forest conservation worksheet is looking at. Then when you start getting down to the individual tree level, sometimes it has to do with the size of a tree. For example, trees that are 30 inches in diameter and greater are protected specially and require a variance in order to remove them. Now, 30-inch diameter tree is actually a huge tree if you think about it. So, it's got a lot more nuance to it. I can't just tell you, leave 20% of the site untouched and you'll be fine, because I don't really know that. We go through the whole process, and really doing a natural resource inventory is kind of your first step in anything in moving forward, and that will give you a whole lot of answers. I can't even tell you exactly where the stream valley buffer is at this point.
Okay, and is a natural resource inventory done with a civil engineering doing tree and topo survey, or what is that process?
So there are 3 types of individuals that can prepare these plans: either a Maryland registered landscape architect, a licensed forester through Maryland, or a qualified preparer, which is a specific, you have to take a test to get that. So I'm happy to email you this full information, and we've also got a lot of it on our website. So you want to find someone who's worked in Montgomery County before. It'll make your process go much smoother. Many civil engineers do have these people that meet these one of these 3 qualifications. They do have them on staff. So they're all able to sign a natural resource inventory for a stand delineation.
Understood. And we intend to work with the local civil engineer, local folks. That's our intent. So yeah, if you could share that information, we will work on the next steps there. But one thing that is a little interesting for me is it's here in this sheet. It's a little interesting for me is that this site was approved for so many units, and I guess their forest conservation, and again, I'm not trying to say if they were approved, I should be approved. Sites are different. All I'm trying to understand is that they were approved for lesser than 20K lots, and I think I can do better in developing the site because of the way it is set up. If I'm allowed to do 10K or 9K lots, but please go ahead.
So the lot just to your south was approved with the cluster method of development and optional method development. They've actually since come back to us because that development that was approved is not feasible. So we've seen concepts for many fewer units, but the minimum tract size required for that is 5 acres. And with the cluster, you can take advantage of smaller lot sizes. But the property that you are looking at is less than 5 acres.
Yeah, I understand.
So the optional method is not, isn't a possibility there. That is why we recommended that you potentially reach out to that property owner to the south, because you might be able to do a much more cohesive development with both of those properties, because I think they're both very challenging to develop, especially on their own.
Right,
That
understood.
report will submit a sketch showing you the concept of like how you can envision if the both parcels get combined, how the public road or private road can go through the both parcels and create a much better cohesive layout for the unit. So
Yeah, no, I understand that. I saw your comment and I agree it would be much effective if these two sites were to combine and do a cohesive development. And if we move forward with the lot, we will definitely consider that part and reach out to them, for doing that.
We are running out of time, but I do want to make sure that we touch upon your water and sewer issues.
Sure. Please go ahead.
Yeah, Alan Sukup with the county's Department of Environmental Protection. You're in the right water category for public water service here. It's W1, but at the moment you are in category S5 for sewer, which means that in order to use public sewer on this property, you need to get a category change from S5 to S3.
Okay.
And in my comments, I put a link to the county's webpage for category changes, where you can find some information on them. You can find the application form, so that you can start that process. You can start that process now.
Okay. How long? What's the length of how long does it take to do the category change?
Depending on when you apply in our cycle, it can take 4 to 7 months.
But it's not something that's an iffy thing. I can get it done. It's just time, right?
Well, I never promised anybody anything.
Understood, and I can completely.
I don't make the decision, but
right.
This is a property that is within the county's planned public sewer envelope. So okay. I think the chances of getting a category change are very good.
Understood. Understood. Okay, that's that. I think I understand that. I'll quickly go through the rest of my questions. And I think I answered that one. Does anyone know if there are any restrictions or easements on this lot? And I specifically asked that question because I see this little square, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to zoom in, bear with me. I see this little square here. Some county drawings show this, some don't know what that is. Don't know if it looks like it's not inside my property, but don't know what that is, and that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I looked through our records. I didn't see any easements, and I'm not sure what this drawing is from that you're looking at, but I do encourage you to do a search through the land records to see if there is anything.
Okay, I can have my title company do that. Okay, the next question I have is, also we talk about that. We will have a request to change in sewer. So the discussion of sewer and water, that applies to what was said applies to both sewer and water, right?
Just sewer.
No, the water is category W1, which means that it is approved for public water service.
Okay, got it. Understood.
Category S5, that's for the sewer only. That's the category that needs to be changed.
Understood. Okay.
Did you see my answers to these questions?
I did, and I still had some follow-up questions.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you saw that.
Yeah, no, I did. Thank you for that. Number 16, I found a calculator online that on Montgomery County's website that talks about the fees, impact fees. They were coming out for a 3,500 square feet or 4,500 square feet home. It was coming out to be more like 50,000. Is that about approximately correct, or was I misreading something there?
So WSSC would be the one, I believe, that calculates that. Is that correct, Alan? You're asking about fees for water and sewer connections?
That's right, the impact fees. It was all the impact fees, not only water and sewer, it was the school district impact. It was all impact fees.
Right. I don't know if anybody that's in this room or online really deals with those directly, but There should be a link from the website you were looking at if you want to ask specific questions about that, but I believe the water and sewer fees would come from WSSC. The transportation fees are charged.
And what I would suggest, that this is Alan Sukup again, what I would suggest that you do as you start to move towards your category change request is to talk with WSSC's Development Services Division.
Okay.
Here at WSSC, I will.
How you're going to move forward with service for this site and what the costs are going to be from WSSC. You have to supply the infrastructure.
Right.
And I think someone from WSSC is actually.
Yes, I'm here. I will leave my contact information in the chat so you can send me email and ask all the questions that you need from us.
Okay, that'd be tremendous if you could do that.
But like Alan said, for sewer, you need to change first the category, and that need to be through Montgomery County.
Okay, got it. I have two last questions. One is, if I end up in a situation where a lot is 19K and not 20K in this R200 zoning, just because of the stream valley buffer, the forest conservation, and all that, is that something that the county would consider? I'm not saying you would approve or not. Would you consider something like that, or is it a strong rule, hard line, 20,000 square feet and nothing less?
So for a buildable lot for a house, you would need 20,000 square feet. You could have an outlot for example, with the stream valley buffer and the forest conservation easement, that can be less than 20.
Understood. Okay, got it. And then
as long as it's acceptable, from an environmental perspective.
Understood. And you would not also, or would you consider trees that are confirmed as heritage trees and are in somebody's backyard, but they're not in a buffer zone?
So
consider that?
we work with, we always work with applicants to meet your environmental requirements on site. We do start from the position that they should be off lot, but it also kind of depends on the lot and the siting, and it's really for an enforcement issue, and we do not like to set homeowners up for an enforcement problem. Exactly. We don't want to make it tough on people. No one wants to be in that position. I just wanted to point out that I dropped some information for you in the chat. So that should help you.
Okay, perfect. And my last question is, there is methods of doing this where it is done as a condominium regime, where the one unit doesn't own the lot, or they only own 5 feet beyond their lot, and the whole community is considered as a condominium. And then in that case, even though they walk around as if it was their lot, it's not really their lot, it's part of the HOA. It's a documented condominium regime, code or law. Would you consider that as a possibility for development in this law, or would you?
Anybody from legal have any thoughts about that? I'm not sure I totally understand the question, but.
Essentially, you build houses, but you don't sell the land beyond the house. They only own the house and the land underneath, even though the HOA may let them treat a little bit of it as their backyard, but everything outside their built area is HOA, not their land. And it's part of a published condominium regime thought process.
It would be detached houses. Are you asking about detached houses?
Yes.
I mean, I've never heard of anything like that. So the resident would own the lot that they have the house on? Is that what you're asking?
The resident would only own the extents of the carpet area or the built-up area. They won't own any more than the exterior walls of the lot. I can send you some published documentation, and I know we're running out of time, but again, if this would be considered, I think I could solve the forest conservation requirements, because I would be able to save most of the trees. What I wanted to do on this whole lot was leave it wooded, so it's, it's showing, it shows privacy, or it gives privacy to each lot owner, and they feel like they're living in a wooded zone, and it takes away most of their backyard. They'll have a smaller backyard, very small, but the community would mostly be left with trees, and the only things we would clear is roads and building footprints and maybe 1,000 square feet of backyard. That's how much we would clear up from the forest.
While I think that's very laudable, I will just say that that's very difficult to accomplish because of the site grading necessary and the need to have positive drainage so that people's lots aren't draining onto each other's lots.
That is one thing that is good about this lot. And I'll show you the topography of this lot is such that it drains towards Radwick Lane, and it has a 40-foot, it drains like it has a 40 feet topography from the back to the front. From here.
Sir, I think we
Yes.
need to stop because.
Okay, got it, understood.
10 minutes past our end time, and everybody has provided you contact information in the comments and in the chat. So if you have other questions, you can reach out to them individually.
I can do that. Is there meeting minutes published from this meeting or no?
Meeting minutes, no, but you could. It has been recorded, so you could go back through and listen to it.
Perfect. I appreciate everybody's time, and we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.